Hello, everyone. This is Keith Stone. I'm your host for the Cosmos Society Online Open House Series. Our guest today is Lucia Athanassaki, Professor of Philology at the University of Crete and current fellow at the Center for Hellenic Studies, where she is pursuing her research on Euripides' dialogue with civic iconography. And some of that research is what she'll be sharing with us today under the title of Euripides Erechtheus in context. But before we get to that fragmentary tragedy, Lucia, could I ask you the question that I ask everyone is, which is what you look back to as kind of an inspiration for your studies of the ancient world? Is there a particular moment or anything like that?
Well, in Greece, my generation started ancient Greek at the age of 12. And I had some fabulous teachers, which made me, love the language. So I started with the language, and they taught it, like a mystery kind of novel. We have the subject, we have the object, we have this, what are we missing, etc. So I loved it. And then, I started, once I learned some ancient Greek, we started on literature. And I loved it. It was for me the most favorite class throughout my high school. And then I liked other things. I liked architecture, but I think I liked literature more. But eventually, after many years, I managed to combine classics and art and architecture. So, I think that I love what I am doing now.
That's wonderful. Thank you. All right, we're ready for you to begin, and just let us know when you need the slides.
Okay, thank you. And again, many thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to lecture for the Cosmos Society, but I have to warn everybody that I have no experience with online talks, so fingers crossed. As Keith said, my topic today is Euripides Erechtheus in context. What I plan to do is to read the Euripidean play against its political, artistic, and religious background. As we all know, the Attic dramatists did not address a small group of intellectuals. They addressed all citizens, the polis at large. The big dramatic festival was the Great Dionysia. By 432 BC, however, we know that tragedies were introduced in another Dionysiac festival, the Linnea. The citizens gathered at the theater of Dionysus twice a year, and they watched plays during the two festivals in honor of the god. And now I will need my first slide, please. Well, I hope you all see the theater of Dionysus, which was located and is still located, I'm happy to say, on the south slope of the Acropolis, which was the heart of the religious, artistic, and political life of Athens. The ancient Agora was located to the northwest of the Acropolis and was bounded on the south by the hill of Areopagus. We can see on the map the location of the theater of Dionysus in relation to the Acropolis and to the Agora. I don't need the slide anymore, thank you. The Acropolis was not, of course, only the most important religious spot in Athens. It was the focal point of some of the most famous works of art. The Parthenon is undoubtedly the most emblematic masterpiece, but in the late 5th century, the place was packed with first-class art. The same is true for the area of the Agora and, of course, the theater of Dionysus. Our friend, Euripides, had a very keen eye for art, if we are to judge from the many references to art in his work. According to an ancient tradition, he was also a painter. We do not know, of course, how reliable this tradition is. But if he was a painter, his interest in art makes sense. It could well be that Euripides' readers and later commentators came up with this idea in order to account for his fascination for art. But whatever the case may be, what we have is lots of references to art in his works. Our play, Erechtheus, was probably produced in 422 BC or a little later, and as I hope to show, it responds to the construction of the Erechtheion on the Acropolis, which either started or resumed the year before, 423, 422. As we will see, the Erechtheion was in many ways a very enigmatic and complex building. Now, for the moment, I would like slide 2 in order to have a look at the monument. Well, this is what it looks like. Thank you. I think we can remove the slide. Thank you. Erechtheus is a fragmentary play. Thanks to the papyri, we have now 250 lines. The fragments come mainly from 3 sources. The most recently published fragment was discovered in 1962. It comes from a Sorbonne papyrus, and it was part of a cartonnage of a mummy. Some 34 lines are transmitted by John of Stobie. The rest come from a prosecution speech against Leocrates, which is the only extant speech of Lycurgus, the statement and orator, and we have given you some paragraphs to read from this oration. Well, there is no need to say that I wish more lines were preserved. But on the basis of the Lycurgan summary and the fragments we have from other sources, we can reconstruct the plot as follows. Eumolpus, son of Poseidon and Chione, invades Attica, leading a Thracian army. The king of Athens, Erechtheus, consults the Delphic oracle. He learns that he must sacrifice one of his daughters in order to save his city. His wife, Praxithea, whose patriotic speech is cited by Lycurgus, agrees to the sacrifice. Before the battle, Erechtheus gives advice to his successor, an adopted son. A messenger announces victory over the enemy and the death of Erechtheus to Praxithea and the chorus. At that moment, the chorus feel an earthquake, which they proceed to describe in vivid detail. This is when Athena appears ex machina and asks Poseidon not to destroy her city. Then she orders Praxithea to bury her daughter who sacrificed herself for Athens. The goddess reveals the immortality of the 3 daughters who will receive cultic honors. King Erechtheus himself will receive cult as Poseidon Erechtheus. Finally, Praxithea will be Athena's first priestess, and the descendants of the defeated Eumolpus will become priests in Eleusis. I would like to have a look at Athena's instructions, and what I will do is I will read in English translation selective lines from Athena's speech Ex Machina. And you, savior of this land, hear now the words of Athena, who has no mother. First, I shall instruct you concerning your child, whom your husband caused to be sacrificed for this country. Bury her where she breathed out her pitiful life, and these sisters also in the same earth tomb, in recognition of their nobility, as they did not allow themselves to forsake their pledges to their dear sister. Therefore, these girls' souls have not gone to Hades, but they have lodged their spirits in the heaven, and shall make their name renowned. Mortals shall call them the hyacinthid goddesses throughout all Greece. I instruct my citizens to honor them, never forgetting this over time, with annual sacrifices and slaying of oxen, adorning these rituals with sacred maiden dances. For your husband, I command that a precinct be built in mid-city with stone surrounds, and on account of his killer, he shall be called revered Poseidon, surnamed Erechtheus, by the citizens in the course of their sacrifices of oxen. To you, Praxithea, who have restored this city's foundations, I grant the right to make burnt sacrifices for the city on my altars, and to be called my priestess. You have heard what must be done in this land, and now I shall tell you the judgment that Zeus, my father in heaven, passes. Eumolpus. At this point, the text becomes very lacunose, but what survives suggests that Athena prescribes the Eumolpid priesthood at Eleusis. The precinct of Poseidon Erechtheus on the Acropolis is a sanctuary that became later known as Erechtheion. I repeat it because people point this out, that when it was built at the time of Euripides, it did not have this name. As I already said, its building must have started or resumed in 423-422. This is not only an enigmatic building, it is a complex building which was in dialogue with the Parthenon. As we have seen, Eumolpus is the son of Poseidon. His invasion of Attica is a repetition in the next generation of the contest between Poseidon and Athena for the patronage of Athens. The archaeologist Christian Survinu Inwood suggested that we may see the invasion of Eumolpus as an attempt to reverse the outcome of the contest of Poseidon and Athena. For a long time, the contest of Poseidon and Athena over the patronage of Athens has been viewed as a 5th century Athenian invention. The reason is that it is first attested in the second half of the 5th century on the west pediment of the Parthenon and in Herodotus. This view has recently been challenged in favor of a 6th century date, which seems to me much more plausible. But let us take a look at the Parthenon now. The Parthenon stood on the Acropolis for thousands of years. In 1687, however, the canon of the Venetian Doge Francesco Morosini hit the Parthenon and caused very severe damage. In the looting that followed, the horses of the west pediment fell down and were smashed. Since all that happened long before the age of photography, We would know far less about the Parthenon than we do, thanks to the Marquis de Nointel and his retinue, who visited the Acropolis 15 years before the destruction by Morosini. One of the Marquis's entourage, the painter Jacques Carré, made a series of drawings which, thank God, have survived. And I would like to see slide 3, please. On the screen, we see one of these drawings, namely the west pediment of the Acropolis before its destruction. The center of the pediment featured the contest of Athena and Poseidon over the patronage of Athens. We see a number of male and female figures who look toward the center of the scene, which is occupied by the two gods and their horses. The identity of the viewers of the contest has been variously explained, but for our purposes, what is important is the Athenian self-confidence that emerges. We do not need the slide anymore. Thank you. It is important to note that by placing the competition of Poseidon and Athena on the west pediment of the most important building on the Acropolis in the mid-430s, the Athenians broadcasted urbi et orbi the keen interest of the two gods in their city. Now, if this is not Athenocentrism, I don't know what Athenocentrism is. The viewer of the pediment would also know the outcome of the competition. Athena, whose birth is depicted on the east pediment, had won the contest. I want to go back to our play and explore the effect of its dialogue with the pediment. When Euripides produced his Erechtheus, the payment had been in place for some 10 years. A great number of Athenians and visitors from other cities would have been able to admire the impressive sculptures. In Erechtheus, however, Euripides did not dramatize the initial contest, the contest we see on the west pediment. He dramatized the renewal of conflict, which this time was not peaceful. The question that I've asked myself is what Euripides' audience would make of the fact that their city paid a heavy toll as a result of the renewed rivalry between Poseidon and Athena in the next generation. I remind you that the king of Athens died, his 3 daughters died too, and Poseidon, angry at the death of his son Eumolpus, caused an earthquake that threatened to destroy Athens. The danger was such that Athena intervened on behalf of her beloved city. The answer I've given to my question, how did it look, is it didn't look good at all. In Erechtheus, Euripides shows how destructive Poseidon's wrath can be. Euripides' audience would be very sensitive because they had recent first-hand experience from an earthquake. According to Thucydides, in 426, Euboea and Attica were hit by a series of earthquakes. As a result, King Agis and his Peloponnesian allies did not invade Attica that year, and that was the case for the years to follow. Archaeological evidence shows that the earthquake damaged several areas in Athens, such as the Themistoclean Wall, the Ceramaicus, and the Agora. According to archaeologists Manolis Kores and the late Charalambos Bouras, The earthquake caused some damage to the Parthenon too, but that damage was quickly repaired. I think that the dramatic earthquake on the Acropolis would inevitably evoke the historical earthquake some 4 years earlier. Euripides Erechtheus is not the only play that evokes the earthquake. The Athenian comic hero Dikeopolis had already alluded to it some 3 years earlier in Aristophanes' Acharnians. The wrath of Poseidon was no joke for anybody, but especially for a sea power like Athens. The question is, if following the earthquake, the Athenians took measures to step up the honors they paid to the god of the sea and the earthquakes, and that is Poseidon. Although certainty is impossible, it is highly probable that the decision to build the Erechtheion responded not only to the increasing importance of the sea, but also to the earthquakes that hit Athens in 426. It is time to take a closer look at the Erechtheion, which Pausanias described some 5 centuries later as follows. There is also, and this is Pausanias that I'm reading out now, there is also a building called the Erechtheion. Before the entrance is an altar of Zeus, the Most High, on which they never sacrifice a living creature, but offer cakes, not being wont to use any wine either. Inside the entrance are altars, one to Poseidon, on which, in obedience to an oracle, they sacrifice also to Erechtheus, the second to the hero Bootis, and the third to Hephaestus. On the walls are paintings representing members of the clan Boutade. There is also inside, for the building is double, seawater in a cistern. This is no great marvel, for other inland regions have similar wells, in particular Aphrodisias in Caria. But this cistern is remarkable for the noise of waves it sends forth when a south wind blows. On the rock is the outline of a trident. Legend says that this appeared as evidence in support of Poseidon's claim to the land. It is clear from this description that the Erechtheion preserves, on the one hand, the memory of the contest of Poseidon with Athena and the strife of their descendants, and on the other, the reconciliation on the cultic level. I want to say a few words about the relation of the Erechtheion and the Parthenon, and in particular about the dialogue of the two buildings. First of all, the two buildings were located very close to one another. And I would like Keith to show us slide 4 now. And this is a 19th century drawing that shows what Acropolis looked like before they pulled down the houses that people had built. So I guess that was prime real estate in the 19th century. But let us have a look at slide 5. Now, I show you this slide because I want you to see how close the two buildings are. Right in front of us is the Erechtheion. This is the east side. This is not the side I've been talking about, but this is the best picture we have been able to find to show how close the two buildings are. And can we have slide 6, please? Okay, Now, you see, this is the west side, the Parthenon and the Erechtheon, but because the picture is taken from far away from the hill of Philopopus, you get the wrong idea of proximity, but we get the right side. And this is the side of Erechtheon that talks to the Parthenon as far as the Erechtheus goes. And here I want to make a parenthesis and say that there is this fascinating book by John Connolly, which is called The Parthenon Enigma. And she reinterprets the east side, the frieze, on the basis of Euripides Erechtheus. But this is something totally different from what I am trying to do. But I feel the need to mention the book because it is very well written. So it is a controversial book, but if you are interested, you may want to have a look. Okay, so we can remove this slide. Thank you. Now, if we look at the two buildings, the Erechtheon and the Parthenon, from the point of view of the representation of rivalry of Poseidon and Athena for Athens, it is clear that the emphasis and the perspective are different. Do you hear a noise? Oh, okay, good. There is a noise here at the center. As I have already said, the Parthenon foregrounds the interest of the two gods in the city and the contest they are prepared to have in order to win its patronage. The Erechtheon, on the other hand, retains the memory of the contest, but foregrounds the honors mortals pay to these gods and their descendants. In other words, unlike the Parthenon's emphasis on what the gods were prepared to do for Athens, the Erechtheon reverses the perspective and showcases what the mortals are prepared to do for the gods, and in particular Poseidon. I suggest that Euripides Erechtheus responds to this shift of emphasis and perspective. The play dramatizes the conflict and destruction on the divine and human level and ends with Athena's effort to put an end to destruction and human loss. The role of Athena ex machina seems to me to be Euripides' own touch that takes the dialogue of the two monuments a step further. In other words, it is the patron goddess of the city who puts an end to her rivalry with Poseidon and initiates a new phase in which she will share honors and prime sacred space with a rival on the Acropolis. The message of the play is reconciliation. From a religious point of view, reconciliation meant upgrading the cult of Poseidon. From a political viewpoint, reconciliation meant peace with the enemy, the Spartans and their Peloponnesian allies. If Erechtheus was produced in 422, as some people have thought, it was a herald of the peace of Nicias that was signed in 421. If it was produced after the peace of Nicias, it was a reminder of the heavy toll of conflict and of the importance of reconciliation. But the message, reconciliation, was relevant throughout the Peloponnesian War. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can see Euripides in a whole new way now. Things I haven't thought about. I'm thinking back to the plays that I do know. But while I'm formulating my thoughts, does anyone else have any questions right off the bat for our guest? Sarah.
Yes, I was struck by one of the things you were saying towards the end of your presentation about Athena as a deus ex machina, and this theme of reconciliation and sharing honors. And it was reminding me of the end of the Eumenides of Aeschylus, where she does something similar with the Eumenides. And I wondered if you think there was any connection maybe in Euripides' mind when he was putting this together, formulating that rivalry and that reconciliation.
Yes, well, I think Aeschylus is the tragedian that Euripides always converses with. And I think that this is why Aristophanes stages, this contest in the underworld between Aeschylus and Euripides, because what you said is absolutely right. Euripides always talks to Aeschylus, and you're absolutely right. It is reconciliation in the Eumenides. And I have read extensively in the past about the reconciliation in the Eumenides. And one of the interpretations is that in that play, Aeschylus advocates the reconciliation between the Alcmeonids, Pericles, and Phylaides, Cimon. You know, the two families had fallen out at that time. It is possible. Now, if I am right, and there is the message of the play is reconciliation, and I cannot see what other message this play sends to the reader and the audience, of course, the only difference would be that whereas Aeschylus had in mind internal strife, Euripides has in mind external strife, not of course because there were not differing opinions, in the late 420s in Athens, but at that time the most important strife was the one that they had, with the Spartans and the Peloponnesians, which was, also the reason for the plague, because the Athenians, got into the big walls, to be protected, and then the plague broke out several years earlier. That is true, but it was a very suffering city, I think.
Great, thank you.
Maria?
Go ahead, Maria.
Okay, let me unmute myself. So, Lucia, thank you very much for this very clear and very exciting presentation. I would, since you just rounded up your answer to Sarah with all these disasters that have fallen upon Athens, we all know that Attica in general is an earthquake-prone area. And you also mentioned that these earthquakes that Thucydides describes had a profound effect on Ceramicus, if I remember correctly, on the Themistoclean walls and on the Parthenon. So, could you, in a way, could you say that the earthquake that took place, if I remember correctly, in 426 BC? Is that correct? Or, am I remember? Well, whatever the date, marked a turning point in what we may call the facilities of the city, of the structure of the city as it is, of even the social structure. Do we have any information about the aftermath of this earthquake? Why this earthquake was this earthquake more important, more significant than any earthquakes that took place in the past?
Well, I don't know. You see, it seems to me, if we are talking about disasters, as you say,
Mm-hmm.
The most important disaster was the plague.
Mm-hmm.
The earthquake, and of course, as you know, I am not an archaeologist. I simply read the archaeological record. It is an article that Susan Rotroff has written on this subject. Did cause damage in the Ceramaicus and the Themistoclean wall and on the Acropolis, but it doesn't seem to have a huge effect in Attica. You know, it was not Thucydides, for instance, who describes the earthquake, does not describe the damage in Attica. Euripides is silent. We know about the damage from, you know, excavations. Euripides, I'm sorry, Thucydides talks about the damage in Euboea, you know, elsewhere. It was really a tsunami. So I don't think the damage was huge in Athens. But what happens is that the Greeks, it is the first time, it is the first time that Greeks fight with against Greeks on such a huge scale. Because the big conflict of the past was the conflict with the Persians. And what happens is that both that Thucydides talks about another huge earthquake, and this is the earthquake on Delos, the island of Delos, which Thucydides places right before the Peloponnesian War and considers it a sign of the destruction that was to come. And Herodotus talks about the same earthquake, but he says that this earthquake happened when the Persians, Datis, was about to invade Greek cities. And Herodotus says that was the first and the last time that Delos was shaken, and undoubtedly it was a sign of what was to come. So it seems to me that earthquakes in literature and historiography are used as a sign of things going wrong, not only on the ground, not only in real life, I mean, in terms of an earthquake, but earthquakes are used as signs of wrong decisions on the political and military level, let's say. Now, to go back to Athens in the 420s, what we have is this horrendous plague, you know, that took a great human toll. And the moment, and the plague, you know, broke out in 429, right? So 3 years later, by the time they have started recovering from the plague, they have an earthquake. Even if the earthquake was not, you know, a hugely damaging earthquake, people would think, you know, what on earth is happening to us? Why is Poseidon angry? Because what happens is that later, around 411 in the Lysistrata, Aristophanes, Lysistrata rather, in Aristophanes through Lysistrata, reminds the Spartans of the earthquake that Poseidon sent them in 465 when the Spartans killed some suppliants in the sanctuary of Poseidon in Tenaron. And so Lysistrata says, well, remember Cimon and the Athenians came to help you. So I think, you know, an earthquake, whether it is very damaging or not, was an opportunity to rethink one's behavior, because people believed that it was Poseidon who sent the earthquakes because he was angry. I'm sorry, it was a long answer, but this earthquake is, you know, very important.
You included all the perspectives, both for, you know, the religious side or the perceptions that people in the past, especially in ancient Greece, had about earthquakes, but also what you wonderfully said about the real aspects of an earthquake, the combination of a plague, which was a natural disaster, it was a natural hazard, and the combination with another natural hazard, which was interpreted as a God-sent omen. At least that was its interpretation.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, that's a really exciting presentation, Lucia. Thank you so much. My head is spinning, you know, from all the new ideas that you presented. What I had thought of it, and I think we're looking at two facets of the same thing. You know, I had thought of it as a salvation drama, you know, with Poseidon thinking about saving his son Eumolpus, and Athena concerned to save her city, and Praxithea being concerned for the safety of her husband, who unfortunately perished, as did Eumolpus. So I know the literature doesn't favor this, but I think of this a lot as you say, in dialogue with Aeschylus, in dialogue with Seven Against Thebes, where Eteocles is, you know, going to the wall to save Thebes. This is Euripides. This may be like one of Euripides' answers. I mean, the Phoenici, one of his answers to Aeschylus is very influential, Seven Against Thebes. But there's so many. This is such a tantalizing 200 plus lines. You know, you just there are these snippets that Stabius and others cite that, like talking about adopted, arguing the point of natural children versus adopted children, and how does that relate on the divine level? Well, I don't think Euripides puts anything in his dramas without several purposes.
Yes, you're right. I think that if we had more lines, we may have been able to think of other strifes. I mean, internal conflict. Right now, we are comparing, thanks to your question and to Sarah's question, we are thinking of its dialogue with Aeschylus. But in Aeschylus, Although, you know, now that, I mean, you made me think, thank you. I think there is something, because the humanities are coming from the outside, you know. It is very interesting because in Aeschylus, Athens is the place of reconciliation of the humanities that come from the outside, and Orestes, who also comes from an outsider. So they both go to Athens in order to find justice, let's say. The Seven is a play that is showcasing both internal and external conflict. Internal conflict is because Polynices and Eteocles are brothers, but external because the rest are not. They are allies of Polynices. So it is very interesting because we have something similar here. We have Erechtheus, who is autochthon, you know, he's from Athens, the king of the Athenians. And then you have the Eleusinians, the sons of Poseidon, who are coming from the outside. So the comparison between this play and the Seven is very good, I think. I think it is very important to try and think, you know, of this configuration, you know, a native army versus, you know, an enemy coming from abroad. So, would you like to say a little more about that? Because I think you have your fingers on something very important now.
Well, I think it is deep. The inside outside conflict. There's several ways that it seems to me that it speaks to later dramas of Euripides that we have more completely. Now some of this is it's sort of like ascending and descending and pushing out and pulling in. I've been reading Iphigenia at Aulis, and you know, there are so many themes in that drama that are tightly interwoven in the drama that echo the themes that we see in the Eurystheus, such as the sacrifice of a daughter to please the gods, the inner workings of on the human level. I mean, it plays out on the social level for most of the drama, and then in the end, you know, Athena ex machina delivers a resolution, and you know, the Victorians tended to criticize these these happy endings, so to speak, tragedies of Euripides as melodramas, but I think they missed the point. I think Euripides is a great dramatist who puts the human conflict. I mean, he makes it tighter than and more tense than anybody before him, as in the Orestes. But it has to get resolved. I mean, you can't just. I mean, there wouldn't be any humanity if it just kept on going that way. So, in the end, we need a God to save us, and I think Euripides plays this theme of the Eurystheus soteria, salvation from the gods. And thank goodness that we have that Papyrus Sorbonensis that gives us the ending.
Yes, yes. Can you imagine? I mean, if we didn't have it, it would go, you know, into all sorts of different directions. But now I want to comment on two things. The one is a small point. Iphigenia, you know, is being sacrificed, or, you know, whatever happens in her case, for an aggressive war, right? Because, you know, they wanted to go to Troy and take back Helen, whereas the daughters of Erechtheus, the one, and then the two sisters who follow her, are sacrificed, you know, for saving the land. But again, it is very important because these are very young people. These are the future. And I think this is what people should keep in mind, that by sacrificing the youth in your country, for whatever reason, either for an aggressive war or for a defensive war, you sacrifice the future. And I think this is the symbolism, the important symbolism of Euripides, you know, who has all these very young victims of wars. Now, the gods, as you know, are a great puzzle in Euripides, because of all tragedians, Euripides problematizes religion, and then he affirms it at the same time, because it's always the gods who give a solution ex machina in Euripides, much more than they do in Sophocles and Aeschylus. And it seems to me that Euripides plays to his audience, because he knows that a great part of his audience believes in gods. So for those who believe, they say, well, you know, you need only a god can save you the way you have done things. For those who do not believe in gods, and we know that in the 5th century there were several atheists, he encourages them to see in God the superior power, you know, somebody who comes from elsewhere and gives a solution. And what comes from elsewhere can be even a disaster, you know, something beyond human control. So these are thoughts, you know, that I made thanks to your point. I mean, your comparison with Iphigenia and the intervention ex machina.
You know, if I may, I don't want to monopolize. I know the others have questions, but just if I want one, you know, there in Erechtheus, there's so much about. I mean, there, as you say, it's saving the homeland, and not only does the one daughter required by the god or the oracles get sacrificed, the other two siblings, the two daughters, join in to valorize the sacrifice, and I have to believe that Athenian tragedy valorizes family, and in Eurystheus is one of those rare situations where, you know, the family interest and the city-state polis interest is not just totally parallel on the same track. There you have a conflict, and the you know, to save the city, to save your city, you make those sacrifices. And I think death in the drama is really has sort of universal symbolic significance, you know, for that, you know, in a war or to preserve peace, we all make sacrifices, you know, to preserve peace, to reconcile with former enemies. We give up things, even if we don't die. And just a personal opinion.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah.
Let's go to Georgia.
Thank you very much for the wonderful Jack, everybody. Yes, actually, I wanted to say, Lucia, if I may, actually, I think you mentioned it yourself, but didn't elaborate on it, because you said for you, reconciliation is the key theme of Erechtheus. I would say reconciliation plus, let's say, a questioning of the sentiment, if there was, of patriotism in Athens of his time, where patriotism would have meant, as you said, to sacrifice youth. To sacrifice the youth, meaning the future. And this is, I think, a very interesting twist, because Euripides is a person, or lived in an era where all these losses were not just abstract, were very real. You know, this era of one failure or one catastrophe after the other for him. And I think that even the choice of the myth, by naming the daughters, are not just, you know, abstract losses, they are very real, personalized, you know, in the play and in the consciousness of the Athenians. It is part of the game that the Athenians were losing concrete members of their society. And this is a very nice twisted intertextuality in Lycurgus' speech, actually, because he takes what he thinks is the Calliston paradigm, you know, the noblest paradigm, the noblest example of tote patrida philein, to love your country, to love your homeland country, homeland, patris, patricia. But actually, for Euripides, to love is what you said, is to be able to assess what you can do and how you can, in a way, save it, as in keep it for the future. Reconciliation is the key here. And I like very much, you know, the Douglas frame display of the evolution of the myth of Erechtheus from being this king who was placed, actually nourished by Athena, placed in her temple in the first version in Homer Iliad, and then by Euripides chooses this other version, and that's because of the evolution of Athena herself, you know, through time. And my last remark would be that Poseidon lost the contest, or lost the patronage, but the Athenians could not do without him. I mean, he represents and he stands for all the horrors that you know, hunt them down, tempest, earthquake, and so on. So I think Euripides is really trying to rekindle, you know, the emotions that are important for keeping a sentiment what is important, not only for the city, but for the society as itself. Thank you very much.
I have to say, Georgia, I think that Lucia dropped out accidentally partway through your question. I don't see her reappearing yet, so if nothing else, we'll have her respond, hopefully, to your beautifully phrased question when we can get in touch with her again. Well, let's see. I've let people at the center know that she's having some difficulties, so hopefully she'll reappear here. One thing I can say is that it's interesting to compare my favorite Euripides tragedy, the Hippolytus, with what Lucia was just saying about the Erechtheus, the civic iconography of the top of the Acropolis in this case, with what happens in the Hippolytus, which is a temple of Aphrodite on the side of the Acropolis. I see someone's reappearing here. Hopefully it's Lucia. Hi, Doug, CHS IT person.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry about that. We lost power on the computer.
Oh, okay.
Give me 1 second, and I'm gonna switch here to this one.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I'm so sorry. Let's put this one instead. There we go.
Giorgio, once Lucia is back online, do you want to try rephrasing in a quick way what you were asking, or should we save it for later and move on to a couple of other briefer questions? It's up to you.
No, please. No, please. We have a seat. They have all these questions on the right. Let's not now repeat. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have Lucia look at the recording, hopefully.
If I may, I was wondering if there's a correlation with Cecrops' daughters. I don't think there was any legend where they had to be sacrificed, but as I recall, they died. Some of them died shortly after Athena. Their father was the arbitrator in the original battle between Athena and Poseidon. Just glancing at the internet, I can't find it, but our speaker might have some thoughts there.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was emerging from my thoughts as well. Didn't have a chance to track it down either.
And I think I'll do some research on other of Poseidon's contests, like for Corinth. Maybe there's some connection with Helios's people ruling or not ruling after that. I'll have to look.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how things are going there. We were talking earlier about the 7-minute silence. Seems more like the 57-minute silence. Doug, can you hear us? Are you still there? Go ahead, George. What were you going to say?
Just to fill the gap a bit, I think which is I'm not sure we actually mentioned it, but what is the obvious bit of the Dea ex machina of Euripides in this sense was actually to connect the past of the foundation of the city with the present and its cult ritual. So by posting Praxitea as the priestess, or her priestess, and this is very important, obviously in the context of the festival and of their everyday life, or of their special life as Athenian citizen. Just as a remark.
Okay.
It's interesting that the playwrights call for reconciliation, but again and again, the populace of Athens chooses to continue the war. Breaks the peace of Nicaeus, and then I think there are 3 further Spartan offers of peace, all of which are rejected. So I suppose that's like our time.
Excellent remark, Ian.
It's useful having that historical perspective as well. And I was also thinking while we're waiting about the other aspect of Greek tragedy, which is where chorus in particular is, there are young citizens and they're learning about civic duties and presumably in this case some of the rituals that Lucia was talking about. And I was also looking at another book by Matthew Wright about the lost plays of Greek tragedy. And although he doesn't quote the lines, he's talking about a series of maxims given by the king. And he's talking about how they're very quotable quotes. So it's another aspect of how the drama seems to, what we know of the drama, seems to be working on so many different levels at once and providing context, all sorts of context about the rituals and actions of citizens and so forth.
Yeah, well, Georgia, your question reminds me that there are these little tantalizing fragments about the ritual, about not using blood in the sacrifice, in the libations. What fragment is that? Just a moment, please. Anyway, yes, the ritual aspect of tragedy is, the tragedies enacting current Athenian ritual is attested in these snippets that we're not going to get from Lycurgus's speech or the papyrus, but in these little quotes. I don't want to misquote it. I think I have a quick professional translation of crop. Some people may not have this, so let me just read a couple of fragments here. The first one is, and I alluded to that one before, probably in the prologue, Poseidon saying, I rescued him, and that's obviously talking about Eumolpus, and took him to the Ethiopian land. Then fragment 350. This relates to ritual. And since you are dispatching much sacred gruel, you know that from the house. Explain to me why these I'm going to change the translation a little bit. Why these moon-shaped cakes are made from young wheat. So it's laying out the correct manner of libations.
Jack, could I just ask something, since you seem to have all the fragments in front of you? One of the questions in from YouTube, is it possible from the fragments of the play to know which daughter of the 3 was sacrificed? I don't know whether you're able to answer that from what you have in front of you.
Okay, well, that is in the literature, we don't have it in the fragments of the of Euripides' drama, but there are parallel retellings of this story, and the daughters are named. The three daughters are named elsewhere, and one source tells us that it's the youngest daughter, and I don't have the name in front of me. I'll have to look that up. Okay, I'll turn it over to Doug.
Hi guys, we're back. Let's hope this doesn't crash. It shouldn't. Let me close everything else I don't need. Once the other one charges. Okay. Can you deal with this one?
Sure.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
I'm staying here now?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that should be okay.
Yes.
I'll stay here for a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that, guys.
Ooh.
Lost battery.
Hello.
Hello again.
I don't hear, the sound is
Oh.
not.
How about now? Can you hear us now?
Well, a little better, but.
A little better. We've been reading some of the fragments. Jack has a copy of some of the fragments in front of him.
Okay.
Well, do you think Poseidon or Athena was responsible for what happened to us?
That's a great question. I have no way of deciding. What does one do in that case?
Well, if the gods are fighting with each other, then the small people will suffer.
Exactly. We have proof of that now.
That's why we have to keep a balance between the gods.
Exactly.
There's a question here that someone typed in who was watching the live stream. It goes, the Erechtheus shares the building with Poseidon, or Erechtheus shares the building with Poseidon, as the story says. Poseidon with his trireme made a hole through where salty water leaks. This is the building, this is behind the building, not facing the Parthenon. The question is, were there rituals honoring Poseidon at the Erechtheion? I'm not sure I read that quite right, but does that make sense?
Well, I mean, all we can say is that we have Pausanias, for rituals, and these rituals, that Pausanias describes may not have been exactly the same rituals as the 5th century rituals. All we can say is that we have cultic space dedicated to Poseidon Erechtheus. Whatever form these rituals took in the 5th century and, in the 2nd century when Pausanias went by, we cannot tell. But all we care, from this particular point of view is that whatever the ritual, there was cultic space. That would be my answer to that.
Right. Presumably there was some kind of ritual, whatever it was.
Yes, rituals they were, and there is, what happens is that rituals change over time. We know that. So there is a ritual, then it is improved, it changes. That's, we need some kind of evidence for that. We can't really answer these questions by looking only at the building. We need more information, I think.
There's another question about the building here. Could the idea of reconciliation be marked by the caryatids religiously, insofar as they're related to regeneration myths, and I guess geographically, since they come from outside Athens, they come from the Peloponnese?
Well, that's I haven't thought about the caryatids, you know, and as far as the message of the play goes. But I think this is a very nice point, because what this person thinks is that the caryatids is part of the visual architectural message of the building. All I can say is that I like the idea and I would like, you know, to explore it more. I haven't given it much thought, but it's a lovely idea. Lovely idea.
I did that question and I wanted to add that we have to see the garland that we may link it with the daughters sacrificed because of the garland that in the place it says that it's solely for herself, and the caryatids are made into they are girls and could mark the reconciliation, the immortalization, because that garland could be their hair that are all different in the caryatids. The 6 caryatids have different hairstyles at the back. And well, I was thinking if we can do a link with that solely garland that the daughter sacrificed will attain as an indication of rebirth or reconciliation.
Well, as I said, this is a very lovely idea. Thank you. I need to look more into the caryatids because, as you know, even with them, there are many interpretations advanced. You know, what are they doing there? But I like what you're saying. I mean, I am not ready to answer the question now, but I think, you know, you make a number of very appealing points. The one is that the monument, regardless of Euripides, has an inbuilt message, let's say, of reconciliation as monument, whether we had Erechtheus or not. And if we read Erechtheus against the caryatids, we may get another dimension because we have 6 caryatids and 3 daughters, you know. Yes, I think it's worth pursuing further. Maybe, you know, you would like to do something with that. It's a lovely idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if I may, someone asked while we had the technical interruption about do we know which daughter it was who was sacrificed by Erechtheus, and I sort of recalled that it wasn't mentioned in Euripides' fragments, but they're parallel versions in Apollodorus and Hyginus, Pseudo-Plutarch, have different names. So there's probably enough names there to cover all the caryatids. But,
well, yes.
Yes. There are just 3 that sacrifice themselves.
Well, one of the proposals for the one that sacrificed herself willingly, not the 2 sisters, is Procris. But as you say, there are so many names that we would very much like to know what Euripides, what the Euripidean names were.
Any last questions? Should probably wrap it up. Thanks for sticking with us all. And Lucia, thanks for coming back.
Sorry for that. You know, it was divine intervention. I'm positive about that.
What can one do? All right.
Question is Poseidon or Athena?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Lucia, again. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you. Yes.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.